Okay, so now I'm going to do a quick gaming test. I'm going to do Cyberpunk 2077. I've already done this test, but I'm going to do it again on video. Unfortunately, I'm having an issue getting GeForce to actually overlay properly, and I'm having some issues with MSI. I'm not sure why. It could be because I'm running GOG, but it is what it is. So great load times. The SSD is obviously able to keep up. Like, what was that, a few seconds? We're good to go. So that's nice. Let's check the settings here real quick. So we're on 1440p. This is a 1440p monitor. Graphics basically are max. High. Motion blur high. All this is high. Max, 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 max. Ray tracing on Psycho, absolute max. But we'll leave DLSS on auto for now. And we'll see how it goes. So ray tracing on, Psycho settings, everything max, DLSS on obviously, and we're at 65 FPS. Do a quick pop out here. But core temps, as you can see, are extremely high. 100 degrees Celsius, 93 degrees Celsius, horribly throttled. You know, we're down at 2.43. Maybe that it's not being needed. However, you can tell there it's just extremely hot. GPU is 75. So very reasonable on the CPU, on the GPU, reasonable temperatures, but the CPU just not capable. So definitely there's something going on with the case. You know, it's just not the best case design. But the main problem is obviously that the CPU cooler is just garbage. So you're getting a stock Intel cooler on a 10700F. Pop out here. Let's take off some of that DLSS into nothing. We'll drop that down a bit. Off ultra. And let's see what's up. Okay, so ray tracing is on ultra, not Psycho, but ultra. Everything else is max and DLSS is off. And we're actually still getting above 30 FPS, 41. Let's check the GPU temps, still 75. So yeah, you can see that the GPU is fine, more or less fine in this machine. It's not getting super hot, but the CPU is, yeah, it's struggling. It's definitely struggling. So you can see here temperature in the case is now 50 degrees. It's just going to keep going up and up. The more that I basically play this game, you know, it's already up to, now it's 49.4. If I play for a while, it gets up to 60 degrees. I actually stopped playing after probably, I don't know, 20 minutes or 10 minutes, 15 minutes, somewhere around there. And once it got up to 60, because I realized it wasn't going to be able to cool anymore. So, you know, even if the CPU cooler was okay, and a decent cooler, there's just not enough air moving through this case. So you have two issues here. You have inadequate case cooling coupled with too hot of a CPU because the cooler is just not enough. So you can just watch it go up there. Now we're at 50 degrees Celsius. Still going up. Okay, so here we are again. I've actually swapped the CPU for a 10400, not F, not K, just a 10400 that I had on my other machine because I'm actually going to be harvesting that, the 10700F, and putting it in there. And to be honest, based on this machine, when I sell it, people may look at the 10700 as a superior CPU, and it certainly is. but it also is going to be hotter. So my suspicion is that by putting in this 10400F, we might actually see better. What is this here? We might actually see better temperatures. There's some bloatware there. So yeah, let's load up Cyberpunk, or let's load up first this stress test again. Sensors here. I do have my ambient temperature meter inside the computer. It's at 30 now. We'll see how it gets up when I start playing games and stuff. But yeah, let's run it. Let's see what happens. It's a nice program, by the way. And there we are. That's a better setting there. So look at those temps. We're not hitting 100 right off the bat. The 10700F was immediately hitting basically peak temperatures and then throttling. So you can see here, we're not throttling as bad based on the speed of the cores in general. And then temperatures are much more reasonable. Okay, cutting back in here, we're at 3.5 minutes, a little over 3.5 minutes. And again, we're at reasonable temps. We're not hitting that peak. We're not really throttling that bad. I mean, 9.7 is the boost peak, but 3.2, it's around the same speed as the 10700. But we're just not getting nearly as hot. Case temps, much more reasonable. We're still going up, but we're at 40 degrees. It's going up for sure. Eventually it will get to the point where it gets hot and it has a hard time cooling. But the 10700 was instantly throttling, and there we go. We're starting to hit a little bit higher temps. But let's kick this out and we're going to go into some Cyberpunk. So still loading up quite quick. Couple seconds and into the game, so that's really good. FPS, I'll just lower it down there so you can see in the bottom right hand corner. We're at 39. Let's check the settings though. So I've been playing around with the settings a bit before. So yeah, so I had DLSS off. So we'll put it back to auto. We'll leave ray tracing on ultra, and we'll leave everything else on max basically. And there we go. So more or less the same frame rates. 64. I believe we were around 60 before. The game it's not super CPU bound as it is. So I mean, you're not going to see a dramatic difference there. Yeah, so it's running really well. Let's crank this up a bit, and we'll tax the CPU a bit, tax the GPU a bit. So we'll turn DLSS off, crank that up. So it's going to obviously kill the frame rate. So we're sub 30 now. It's not awful, but it looks pretty blurry and gross. But so let's just pop out and we'll check the CPU temps. Sorry, I still can't get the overlay to work very well, but whatever, it's fine. So look at those core temps. They're much more reasonable. So the 10700F was basically instantly throttling. Even in Cyberpunk here, it was getting quite hot. If I reset that, we'll reset the log there. We'll jump back in, and we'll just see. It's just not getting that hot. Okay, let's take a quick look here. Same idea. Not overly hot. So with this machine here, honestly, I would recommend personally getting a 10400 series if you're going to be using it like as is. If you're going to be getting the G5 from Dell as is, you're going to be doing some gaming. Primarily, the 10700 that you can get as an option, it's just too hot. The cooler is just not able to keep up with it. The case is too hot. The CPU cooler is too hot. And so what happens is you get really bad thermal throttling when you're doing like really anything. Games are just the whole time you're at like 90 to 100 degrees. Whereas with this one, the 10400, you're not going to have a lot of issues with gaming in general. The chip is more than capable of gaming. Like you saw there, it's paired up with a 3070, and in Cyberpunk with pretty much everything set up really high, you're GPU bound still. You're not getting CPU bound. So if you're going to be able to get your hands on a 3070 from Dell, 3070 machine, personally, go with the 10400 if you're going to just use it as stock, because it does have reasonable temperatures. Like that is a reasonable temperature level. You're going to probably get not as much raw performance out of the 10400 as the 10700, but the 10700 throttles so much that it ends up becoming problematic anyways. So there you go. I definitely recommend, if you can't get your hands on a 3070 or something along those lines, and you have the time to wait, the Dells are a good option. The 10700 combo, it's just too hot. You can buy, there are some other videos out there, and you can buy aftermarket CPU coolers. There's one from Noctua, and Dell offers a slightly better one, but you're gonna have to also upgrade the case in general. So getting that 10700, I actually wouldn't recommend it. If you're just using it for gaming, grab the 3070 from Dell. Make sure it's paired up with a 10400 series CPU, or or a cooler AMD if they have that option, and go with that. Why try to squeak out those extra couple cores and just have a machine that's just way too hot and thermal throttling the whole time, and just generally having a bad time. So there you go. Hopefully that was informative, and I'll jump over to my other machine. I'm going to do some comparisons and check temps and see that too. But with the 10400 here, it's actually, in some ways, it's actually an upgrade, even though it's a lower CPU.